Alright, so welcome everybody to the Dojo class on Abyssal sites. This is the intro level course, Abyssal 101, and be going over sort of the general mechanics of Abyssals, what you can expect from them, and at the end of the class we're going to be doing an actual Abyssal level 1 site. Should be fairly simple if you guys all have the fits in the description. So I'll start off with like some general information about Abyssals. So Abyssals are part of a lore called the Triglavian Collective, and that's a faction of NPCs who also, you have the Triglavian ships like the Damavik, Drekavik, Vedmak, etc. The Abyssal Dead Space is where they come from. So if you go into the Abyssal Dead Space, it's a PvE site, kind of like a dead site or a mission, where you kill enemies and then take some loot. The different types of loot, there's some materials to build the Triglavian ships, there's blueprints for Triglavian ships, skill books, and there's also these things called metaplasmids, which if you apply them to a module, you can randomly affect their stats. So it's kind of like some RNG gambling. You might make the stats better, you might make them worse. So you might greatly increase the value of your module, or you might break it. And there's also another loot you can get from sites, which is filaments. The filaments themselves are the keys to entering the abyssals. So when you use the key to get in, you're guaranteed to get at least one or two keys from the run itself. So if you don't mind running different types of sites, you'll never run out of abyssal filaments to run. That's a general overview. So the mechanics of abyssals, the abyssal sites themselves, you use the filament in your ship in space to enter the site. And there's two types of sites you can do. They use the same filament, but if you're in a frigate, you can use 3 of the same type of filament, and you can bring 2 frigate friends with you. On the other hand, if you want to do it alone, you can use a single filament if you're in a cruiser size ship. You cannot bring anything above a cruiser size into the dead space, and you can't bring T3Cs. Also, if you're doing the frigate site, you don't actually have to bring 3 people in. You can go in alone, but you still have to use 3 filaments. Once you enter the site, you actually leave the system that you use the filament in. So you won't be in actual space anymore. It's an abyssal, it's an abyssal alternate universe pocket. So you'll disappear from local, your ship will disappear from local, and you will leave behind a beacon where you activated the filament. This beacon is only visible on the overview if you're on grid. It does show up on D-scan, but to warp to it, you have to combat probe it. That is to say that if you go in and do an abyssal site, you're not invincible. Like, people can still combat probe down the beacon where you entered and warp to it and wait for you to come out and gank you. But they have to first know that you're there and also have combat probes. So you're still vulnerable, but if you do it in a safe manner, which I'll explain in a second, you're pretty much safe. Let's see. Yeah, go ahead. So it's actually, rats do have a capacitor, but they have a strange type of capacitor. So the abyssal rats are the same as other rats, and the way that rat capacitors work is that they have 2 capacitors actually. One is unlimited, and it's the one that they use to activate their guns. So you can't actually newt rats out so that they can't fire or can't prop or anything. They will always have enough energy to fire their guns and modules. But the second capacitor is one that you can NOS off of. And that one can be depleted, it can be full or whatever, but it won't affect the rat itself. For that reason, actually, it's a good question. Since newting is a big problem in sites, a lot of the higher tier fits will have a NOS, so that even if you get newted out, you can NOS enough energy to keep your hardeners on. It really depends what fit you're running. T1s are pretty easy in any ship. T2s require some more dedicated fits. T3s are a little more difficult. T4s and 5s would be like kind of the top end of Abyssal running, which, obviously because they're the highest levels. T5s are pretty much, you don't go in there unless you really know what you're doing and have a pretty blingy ship. Oh yeah. Yeah, I will talk about higher level sites and, cruiser sites later in the class. But for the time being, we're just going to do the frigate sites. Um, any other questions? Cool. So the Abyssal site itself, it's basically just a dungeon. There's 3 total rooms. When you use the filament, warp into the first room. Each room has a set number of rats. It'll have a couple loot boxes, but there's only one like main loot box. And then there will be a gate to the next room. You have to kill all the rats to activate the gate, and you should loot because that's the only reason you're there. There's 3 rooms total. Once you kill all the rats in the last room and take the gate, you'll be taken back to K-space where you activated the filament. You should note that you cannot take a abyssal. You can't use the filament if you have a combat timer. So that's to prevent people from just activating a filament if they get in trouble, and they'll be safe in the pocket. Also, as mentioned before, if you die in the site, you lose both your ship and your pod. There is no escaping site without killing all the rats. Another main mechanic of abyssal sites is that as soon as you enter, you start a 20-minute timer. This is for all difficulties. If that 20-minute timer runs out and you're still inside the site, you instantly die. That's your ship and your pod again. So that's kind of the, that's the restraint on abyssal sites. Come again? Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, in each room there's also like a red sphere, and if you leave the zone, you start taking damage, and the farther away you are from the sphere, the more damage you take. That's just to prevent you from like kiting way out. But normally you should never take damage from that. The rats themselves will never leave the sphere. So, if you push them to the edge, they're just going to sit at the edge. That's the site mechanics. So there's actually a bunch of different types of abyssal sites. I'm going to link the filament in Fleet here. Everyone click that and go to the description page. So there's 5 different difficulties of filaments. That's the first word of the name, the calm. Calm means T1. There's T1 through 5. It's calm is T1, agitated is T2, fierce is T3, raging T4, and chaotic T5. You can also tell the difficulty by looking at the image and seeing how many lines there are, like around the round part. The calm here only has 1. Let me see if I have a higher tier one to show you. Here's a fierce. You see it has 3 lines around it. And then the T4s and 5s follow the same pattern, but they're also yellow instead of red. So that indicates the difficulty. The second word in the filament, exotic, that determines the damage type. There's 5 different damage types of abyssals, or is there's 5, yeah. And they each give you different effects. For example, if you look at this exotic filament, it says the abyssal dead space is, let's see, it'll reduce kinetic resistance, but enhance scan resolution. So the kinetic resistance reduction applies to all layers of your armor, that's shield, armor, and hull, and it applies to both you and the rats. Which means that if you go in, you're going to want to deal kinetic damage to most of the rats because they'll have reduced resistance as well. This is why most of my fits have the kinetic damage in there. And for the higher tier sites, you usually want to kind of streamline your build to deal and resist that type of damage. The secondary effect of this one is enhanced scan resolution, which is pretty harmless. It doesn't matter. Some of the other sites have some pretty nasty effects. Like they all have, there's one for each normal damage type, like EM, thermal, and explosive. like the penalty to resist, but the the fire site secondary effect gives everyone in the site 50% bonus to armor. So if you're a shield ship, you barely get any bonus from that, but the drifter battleships and sleeper battleships in the site get a ton of armor bonus, and it's going to take a lot longer to kill them. Harlock, yeah, I posted a link earlier, let me see. Yeah, it's about a third of the way down the page or so. And then aside from the 4 basic damage types, there's also a dark sight, which is all turret ranges get like halved or cut by 70% inside the site. And basically only missile boats do those sights because nothing else can shoot. Note that that applies to drones as well, so even drone boats get screwed over. Alright, so that's, let's see, different types of filaments, blah blah blah. 3 rooms. So the enemies inside the site. You can encounter a bunch of different types of enemies. There's each room has a sort of theme, and it's randomized. So there's the Rogue Drone faction, Drifters and Seeker faction, Sleeper faction, and then the Triglavians. So each room will only spawn ships that correspond to that faction. But even within each faction, there's tons of different types of ships that have different types of E-War. There's webs, there's reps, there's newts, there's paints, tracking disruption, missile disruption. They literally have every form of E-War. So if you want to be doing the higher tier sites, you need to learn the names of the ships and know which one to prioritize. Almost always you'll want to prioritize the newting ships first, because if you get newted out, whether or not you're active or passive fit, you're going to have a bad time. Webbing ships are also usually pretty bad because they slow you down and let you get hit. So they all have different names, like let me see, so the drifters, they'll have a prefix or suffix of null charge. Sleepers have a prefix or suffix of fire watcher or sentinel. Triglavians have starving. So the names kind of, you read them, you kind of can guess what it does, but you definitely want to memorize the names or have a chart up when you do the site. Because, prioritizing rats correctly or incorrectly will mean the difference between a super easy 9-minute site or dying. So that was a pretty big info dump. It's probably pretty hard to keep all that in your head, but you'll learn over time. And that's pretty much... Oh, there was one last thing. Also inside each room, there's 2 other things that can affect you or the rats. There's effect clouds, and there's towers. So the clouds, there's 3 different types. One gives you a penalty to shield boost amount. So, don't enter that one if you're shield boosting fit. If you're just a passive fit, it doesn't matter. The blue clouds they bloom your sig by like 300%. So that's bad for everyone. You want to stay out of those. But sometimes it can be helpful to go in those clouds to leave the rats in as well, because it blooms the rat sigs as well. If you're having trouble hitting the rats, or you just want to apply better to the rats, enter a blue cloud, make them follow you. And then there's yellow clouds as well, which fuck up armor reps. I don't know if I should have said that on the video. The yellow clouds mess up armor reps, which, again, choose wisely whether you want to enter that cloud, but generally you're going to want to avoid them. Adjust the target. It's anyone inside gets their sig bloomed. So if you're outside and they're inside, you'll hit them easier. And then I also mentioned there's towers. There's 2 types of towers. There's automata suppressors, they look like giant PDSs. There's fly bullets everywhere. Those things will activate whenever enemies get in range of them, and they'll damage drones, missiles, and rogue drones. Rogue drones are one of the types of enemies you can encounter. So if you get lucky, you might encounter a room with rogue drone enemies, but then there's a PDS turret next to them, and it'll just kill them off for you. It does some significant damage, but not like a ton of damage. So I wouldn't count on that to save you, but it's a nice bonus to lead them into the tower. The other type of tower is just a tracking enhancer. If you're close to it, you get better tracking. That's, of course, applies to you and the rats. Generally, in frigates, you'll want to stay away from those because you should never have any problem tracking enemies, but you know, the battleships and cruisers will have trouble tracking you. I think I've finally covered all of the info dump. There's, of course, a lot more details and stuff. Read through the page for that. But that covers enough the basics. So does anyone have any questions? Caches? What do you mean caches? Oh yeah, yeah. Inside each room, there's a triglavian biocombinative cache. That's the thing you blow up to grab loot. So you want to do that before you move to the next room. There's also other boxes that are going to be called extraction node or extraction sub node. Those can also have loot. It'll always be less than the main loot. So, you know, if you have extra time, you can feel free to go grab them. But generally, unless you're running T4s or 5s, the side caches are not worth going for. And even in T4s or 5s, you know, if you're AB fit, it would take you ages to burn to them, so it's not really worth going for anyway. All right. Depots, I think you can. I mean, I've never tried. Waiting 1 minute for the depot to anchor is going to hurt you a bit. Okay, so you can't? All right. What do you know about MTUs? Okay. Yeah, I guess if they do work inside, they could help you. But still, again, if you're doing T1, 2, or 3, it's not really worth doing anyway, even with an MTU. LA says you can use them. I've never used them, so. Oh, PvP, yeah, that's in T3, 4, or 5s, at the very last room, you'll get 2 gates. One takes you out of the site, and one takes you to a special arena, where you 1v1 someone else who's also completed a site and chose to do the PvP arena. So it's structured like a normal Triglavian room. There's this red sphere that you can't go out of without taking damage, and it's just you and one other enemy ship. And then there's a loot cache in the middle to fight over. So whoever wins, you know, gets the loot from the enemy and also gets the loot cache and gets to keep their ship. That, yeah, that's like for now. I'm just gonna say, don't go in there. Like never go in there unless you know, like really know what you're doing, because especially with the recent release of the Ikatursa, no other ship is good enough. Like if you look through, I looked through the kill board, and no Ikitursa has ever lost to a non-Ikitursa, and the Ikitursas that do die to other ones are all worth like 6 bill. So you can imagine what the ones that win are worth. The Ikitursa, it's the new Triglavian heavy assault cruiser. It's just undoubtedly like the best 1v1 cruiser in the game. Yeah. Yep, and it's got crazy reps too. I think that actually ends it, the info dump. So now we're gonna actually do. Oh, damn! You have to go now. No, Sierra, you can keep the ship. Um, yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, now we're gonna actually do some sites. So we're gonna have to split up into groups because frigates can only enter the sites in groups of 3. Um, let's see. Can I get 3 people to A up? Okay, Harlock, Boone, and Sed. I'm gonna give the filaments to Harlock. Are you docked? Okay. I did for a while with 2 worms. I only did T2s, and so not really. But I mean, I saw a video once of some guy multi-boxing I forget if it was 4 or 5s, but he was doing 3 hawks at once, and it looked just like terrible. But he was making lots of money. All right, gonna get 3 more people to B up. Yeah, I mean, any safe works. Deep safe is good. All right, so Mikal, Zed, and Thalion. I'm gonna give the Mikal. Can you dock up? Everyone, go ahead and dock up now, unless you're already in a group. If you're in a group, then warp to a random safe, and you know, get your squad mates to warp to you as well. Normally you should not do them in GE because GE has a lot of combat probers. But if you have a really nice safe, or if you don't care really about your ship, it's fine. All right, Mikal's got his filaments. Preemptive C, nice. Gonna get 2 more people then to C up. All right, Zelina, Celerin, and Ghostnix. There's the filaments. Let's go for D now. Free, Adam, and Creator. All right, now E. Okay, Catherine, Slide. Was that everyone? Yeah, Harlock. Yeah, Squad A warp to Harlock. And each squad kind of try to find a safe and get everyone to warp to the safe together. All right, so I'll be with Catherine and Slide. So I'll hold on to the filaments for that group. Preferably the people who I gave the filaments to warp to a safe somewhere. All you technically have to do is be at least 500 kilometers away from any structure. But, you know, the deeper the safe, the better. Whenever you're at your safe, go ahead and just like put your squad number and say like warp to me. Squad E, go ahead and warp to Forum. While we're inside the sites, you can feel free to move off to different comms if you want to. You can just take one of the fleet comms or something. I'm going to stay in these comms, so if anyone has any questions while running the sites, feel free to ask me. Usually neuting first. The ones you're going to watch out for, I'm going to type in the fleet right now. Oh, Dissipator is right. Yep. I should also note that most of these fits depend on, most of them are AB, I think, so they depend on speed tanking and sig tanking. So if you encounter like a bigger ship, whether, you know, cruiser, battlecruiser, or battleship, you're going to want to maintain transversal. And if you don't know what that means, it just means that you have to maintain horizontal speed against them. Don't burn directly at them, because then they'll have a really easy time of hitting you, and you might die. Again, everyone check your pods. I don't want anyone losing a training pod over this. Holy fuck, I'm in my training pod. I'll be right back. If your entire squad is ready, you can go ahead and go in. It'll be nice to stagger it a little bit. Whoever has the 3 filaments, just double-click them and click Activate for Fleet. It'll spawn a little warp gate, and everyone just needs to activate that warp gate to get in. Note the 20-minute timers once you get in. Yeah, if you want to. Oh yeah. Yeah. Don't hesitate to ask questions if you're in your site. Might get a little noisy, but that's fine. Don't die. Also make sure that it's probably not on your combat overview, but you might have to go to a different overview to find the combinative cache. It's classified as a precursor cache. And don't get it confused with the other subnodes or nodes. The only one you want to go for is the Triglavian biocombinative cache. Alright, Squad E, I'm warping back. Remember, keep your prop mods on, keep transversal. Also, for most of the big ships, your strategy is orbit at 500 because they can't hit you. Use your scrams or webs and tracking disruptors as necessary. But if you encounter a battleship, it'll be called a Tesla, like a something grip Tesla. Do not get close to that ship. It has perfect tracking within its range. It'll shred you. So if you encounter a battleship, or sorry, not a battleship, a battle cruiser. If you encounter a battle cruiser, orbit them at like 10 to 15 prop mod on, and they won't hit you at all. Alright, E squad, you ready? Catherine and slide. Cool, I'm activating. Yep, you're gonna want one person to break the cache and loot it, and then just orbit the transfer conduit at 500. It's called the Triglavian biocombinative cache. It's normally between you and the gate-ish. Alright, Squad E, go ahead and take the gate. Yep, it only has like 300 health. It'll make a wreck, and then you just loot the wreck. What was that? Oh yeah, it should be damaged, right? Just go for that. Try to orbit it at 500. Once you get within like 20, if you keep some transversal, it won't hit you. Oh, I almost died. Those are the secondary loot boxes. Watch your health and your reps. I almost just died because I wasn't watching. Briss, yeah, sorry, it's a bit too late to join now. Wow, am I about to die? No way. This would be real embarrassing if I died. Okay, you know what? I don't want to hear it. I was experimenting with T5s. Semi-AFK, yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. This fleet... No, it's a single instance of loot. The Triglavian Biocombinative Cache. Here's what the wreck is called. That doesn't help you if you haven't killed it yet, but... for E? Yeah, go ahead. Group E, yes. Normally the person who jumps in first gets aggro, but it's every time you jump through a gate you have something similar to gate invulnerability, where if you don't touch anything, you don't lock, you don't activate modules, you don't do anything, the rats will not target you for a set amount of time. So Group E on this battleship, you just orbit him at 500. Make sure that while you're approaching him, you have some transversal. Don't directly approach him. LA, the other caches have loot, but generally in the lower level ones, they're not worth your time. Yeah. Also in the lower level ones, or I mean in any room, especially if you're AB fit. Oh, you died? They can. What did you die to? Was it the 6 frigates? Yeah, that is probably one of the rougher rooms for frigates because they can track you perfectly. Which fit were you using? Did you activate your reps? Okay. Yeah, so that's room's definitely going to be the roughest. For the frigates, you might actually want to kite out a bit. That's how I almost died in the first room, but I just heated my reps. Also, you're going to want to focus DPS. Don't split DPS because you want to reduce the enemy's DPS as fast as possible. Yeah, don't. If you the ones that deploy drones are called Vila, Vila. Even if you kill the drones, they spawn another wave, so don't bother with the drones. Once you kill the ship, the drones stop. For the guy who died, the rest of your squad just try to keep going. You should still be able to finish the site with 2 people. So the pylons, those are the towers I was talking about. The ones that either PDS or give tracking bonuses. Yeah, these rooms have some of the best environment designs. In part because they're so small, they can afford to spend a lot of time on these. Yeah, the asteroids and rocks all over the place can be annoying. I mean, yeah, if you want to. So Squad E, this is the tankiest ship in all of Abyssal, the Lucid Deep Watcher. So they're kind of annoying when you encounter them, but you know they normally can't even hit you. So it's just a time sink. Yeah, I made a separate tab just for Abyssals. It's also worth doing for Abyssals to sort not by distance but by type. so that you group all the neuting and webbing ones together. You can see exactly how many there were. One of the kilos I lost was because I sorted by distance and I didn't notice one of the newts, and I started killing other rats, and I was like, why can't I activate my hardeners? But I just died. Yep, 3 rooms. In the last room, the gate is called Origin Conduit. That's how you know it's the last room. Take that, and you leave. Yeah. Also, though, Abyssal sites are very RNG. Like, it can be RNG the ship types, the enemy number, enemy EWAR types, the gas clouds, the pylons, the loot. So sometimes you'll get super easy sites, sometimes you'll get really hard sites. Like Group E right now, we've been shooting at this battleship for about 5 minutes, and it's half dead. These frigate fits should pretty much have no problem if you get 3 of them into a T1, a calm, except for that the frigate swarm. You might have to do a little kiting, and as long as you don't get close to the battle cruisers, that'll shred you. Otherwise, T1 should be pretty easy for these frigate fits. T2s, I tried this earlier with some friends, and they can be difficult. If you get lucky, you can still complete the site no problem. But if you get unlucky, wow, this dude just hit me for half my armor and missiles. What was that? Finally, he died. Okay. I'm taking the gate. Oh, I forgot to loot the cache. It doesn't show up on the default overview. Oh no, we got another one. I linked the cache in Fleet, so if it's not on your overview, go ahead and right-click and add to overview. All right, time to wait another like 7 minutes while we pound this battleship. Yeah, no problem. If you're already done, you can feel free to do whatever you want with the loot. You get to keep the ships if I gave them to you, and go ahead and dock back up. And then if you have questions, you can feel free to stick around, or if you want to do other sites. Otherwise, thanks for coming, everyone. Someone asked what frigs can do. These fits really only can do T1s reliably. You can do T2s if you get lucky with spawns. T3s are off the table. Um, oh, I did say I was going to talk some more about the higher end fits, so I'm going to link some in Fit and Fleet right now. So the worm fit in MOTD, that's kind of the best solo ship, linked there. Has a lot of DPS, has decent tank, it's got regen on the shield, so that's your tank. That can solo T1s. It can do T2s kind of. It'll be rough. Can't solo T3s though. But if you get like 2 of those worms and 1 Logi frigate, you can do T3s easy and maybe T4s. It depends because that fit with that EM ward amp, you have somewhat even resists in the shield. But normally you want to tank it for the damage that you're going to get reduced. Oh, nice. Looks like Group E might cut it pretty close because we got two of the tanky battleships. I'm gonna post some Gila fits as well. Yeah, thanks for coming. So those three Gila fits are different levels of bling. The T2 one can do raging, which is T4, pretty much no problem. You'll definitely want to be really experienced with your piloting and drone and aggro management. But I ran T4s in that no problem. The half bling one runs T4s just super easy. And then the T5 one, that's pretty much the level of bling you'll need for running T5s. Like T5 Gilas are usually 2.5 bill. You can also run T5s in Cerberuses. I've seen people run them in like Curses, Stratioses. Of course, the Ikatursa can do it easy. Maybe a Vedmak. But Gila is just the most used because it's so easy. Yeah, LA, the newts are a big problem. The newts are your biggest enemy in a Gila. You always go for them first. But that's why the fit that I linked has a medium NOS. Because one cycle of the medium NOS gets you 30 energy, or 33, and the adaptive only takes 32. So even if you're completely zeroed out on cap, you can NOS one cycle, instantly turn on your invuln before you get NOSed again. It's up to the runner. A lot of people run active fits. Personally, I don't like them because, you know, if I get nuded out, I'm fucked. So I like passive fits, but up to the runner. For the loot, T1s generally, it's not amazing ISK. Like, for a Newbro, it's definitely good ISK. It's worth doing. But you know, if you can, you're going to want to try to move up the difficulties. Either get some more people to run with and do higher tier with frigates, or grab yourself a cruiser and do higher tier. When I do T4s in my Gila, out of about 90 sites so far, I've averaged 50 mil per site and about 10 minutes per site. And in T5s, I only did 15 or so of them, but I averaged about 125 mil per site and maybe 12 to 13 minutes each. T4. Yeah, the Tech 2 one with the MNOS, that one can do T4s pretty easy. You still have to know kind of how to pilot, and because the biggest threats in the Gila are there's two rooms that you have to worry about. One is if you get the 6 Lashak room, and especially if some of them are the newts, that one's pretty tough. What's up? Okay, cool. Yeah, E, go ahead and jump through. We got only like 4 minutes left. The other room that is the biggest fear that most people die in is when you get the Drifter battleship along with 6 or 7 Drifter cruisers, especially if the cruisers are newts or webs, because the Drifter battleship called Charybdis Tyrannos, he has amazing tracking, anywhere between 20k and like 70k, and he hits you really hard. So you either have to burn out outside of his range and then burn in later, or you have to immediately get under his guns. But if there's newts and webs, you can't really get under his guns, so you have to kite out first. So those are the two rooms that you have the most trouble with. All right, E Squad, go ahead and warp back to Soda. That was a pretty unlucky spawn for us, just in terms of time. It wasn't particularly difficult, though. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's dangerous too. If you bounce into something and you suddenly get 0 speed, Battleship could get a pretty nasty shot on you. So that's nice, yeah. I'm planning to... Dojo is sort of planning to make a program for this, and like handing out filaments and ships, maybe buyback for loot, and also setting up a channel for people to run together. But that's, it's all in the works. Right now, feel free to just ask in anywhere if people want to run. There is a Slack channel. It's Abyssal Tax Space. And you can ask in there if people want to run. Ghost Nicks, yeah. Those are loot you can get from Abyssals, and those will randomize stats and modules. So I'm going to go ahead and end the class here. I'm going to stop the recording.